Hey y'all, my name is Cody, and this is my 1983 Porsche 944. Some things I'm talking about today is my overall experience, some of the common problems I've ran into, some of the common problems these things have, some wear items. It's pretty much kind of obvious. Some good things with the car, some bad things with the car. Yeah. So first thing to start with is the common problems. Some of the common problems with these cars, I wouldn't really count as a problem, more or less just a wear item, which is the timing belt. The timing belt is something that if it snaps, you bend the valves, it doesn't run. That's not that good. Obviously, you're buying a car, you want it to run, you want it to drive. Um, and my overall goal with this car was to get it back to about as factory as possible, with a pretty small budget. As I am a very young person, I didn't have a whole lot of money to throw this thing. So if the timing belt snaps, if it's loose, anything is wrong with the timing belt, it will bend the valves and it will destroy the motor. That's not a cheap fix, as you may need a new motor. It's not simple as just replacing the valves. The valves get bent, and you destroy a couple things inside of there. It's not just those. The next thing I'm talking about is the water pump. The water pump is another one of those wear items, but I list it as more of a common problem because over time, water pumps do fail, water pumps do age. Everything on this car ages at the same rate, I guess. um, if you're doing the timing belt job already, you might as well go into the water pump. Even if your water pump is functioning, if it's the original one, if it's the second one, as these cars are 40 years old, two water pumps for that amount of time is not really a whole lot of time. So if you're already doing the timing belts, go ahead and tackle the job of the water pump. It is very much appreciated by these cars. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the DME relays and some of the electrical problems. So these things they have DME relays. The relays pretty much just send fuel from the trunk or from the gas tank to the motor. The DME relay quits working, then you no longer have fuel to your motor, and which in return your motor doesn't run. Once again, some of the electrical issues that I'm talking about that I personally experienced is the window switches, the mirror switches, and that's really all personally I've ran into. Knock on wood. Over time, as I spoke about in the 96 Boxster, some of the points actually get corroded and they don't work whenever they're corroded. So you got to turn those off. Relatively simple. So I will be going over that in a future video. But as of right now, I'm just going to speak about it. The next thing I'm talking about is glass separating on the trunk. So I'll show you in the little montage. But there's a little glass. Where the glass meets the aluminum stripping up top, I guess you call it. It's very common for these to be separating. I'm very lucky and found one that didn't or hasn't started separating yet. If it does start separating, it's a very, very expensive fix. If you're replacing the whole trunk, if you're going to do it yourself, I've seen people where it's done it and it doesn't look the best, but it does work. It does all of the time. The next thing I'm talking about is all the little rubber bits and pieces of this car. This thing has a lot of rubber. I mean, obviously you see sidewalls and tires, and also the front bumpers and stuff like that. That's over there is obviously tires is replaceable easy. But when it comes to the bumper stuff like that and the rear deck lid, the rubber pieces on that are usually brittle and weak and usually deteriorating, especially by now. Especially if your car's outside, I should say. Something else that's going to follow up with that is the fuel lines. The fuel lines are weak and brittle after a long time because of the rubber, but especially with the fuel lines actually run up and over top of the fender well and then cut across over the top of the cam tower. With there being a lot of heat right there, it heats up really fast, it cools up really fast, and then repeats the cycle a billion times. However many times you have the car running. So with that problem, it's it's a really good idea to relocate the fuel lines. And it's a really common thing with these. If you look up 944 fire, you're gonna see hundreds of photos of these things burn all the pieces, and that's not really a good thing to have, of course, especially such a good car, such a good looking car, I should say. As my car is not perfect, It does have its fair share of dings and paint scratches and paint chips. I love this thing. I drive it, I would say, at least 2 3 times a week. Cold, wet, rain, well, cold, rain, snow. I've done donuts in the yard in the summertime. I've done donuts in the front yard with the snow out there. This thing takes it really well. And as long as you treat your car right, it will treat you right. Um, so yeah, let's move around the other side and talk about some of the wear items. Speaking of some of the wear items, first thing I'm talking about is the suspension. Personally, in my car, the suspension was completely wore out. Over time, stuff does wear out, just like I said in the water pump. Stuff you gotta replace, rubber pieces you gotta replace. It's all wear items. But these are the main wear items that I personally ran into with this specific car. First thing I'm gonna start with, like I said before, is the suspension. When I pulled the suspension out, well, the front struts, when I pulled them apart, they actually fell completely in pieces. I wish I had some more photos of that, but I don't. But I do have some pictures of the rear shocks, and I'll throw those up here in a second. And next thing I'm talking about is some of the seats. So these cars came out with a couple of different options of the seats. The main two being the regular styled seats, and then you also have the sport seats. Sport seats are very, very expensive. You can find a cheap 944, a few $1,000s or less, and it has the sport seats in it. I would recommend trying to get your hands on it because the sport seats alone, if they're in good shape, can sell for a ton of money. Personally, I didn't know this when I started buying one or still looking for one, so I didn't take the time to look for one. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the dash. So the dash is something that I don't think you can find in good shape unless it's sitting in a museum somewhere. The dashes are super prone to cracking and busting. Personally, it does suck to have a cracked dash, but unless you're looking for it, you're not really going to see it, especially if you're driving the car. Something that you're looking over, you're not looking at. So I personally, it doesn't bother me too much. I wish this car was exactly perfect and same that came from the factory, but something like that's not going to affect the driving experience. It may affect the look, but it's all right. Things are meant to get used. The next thing I'm talking about with these cars being or reaching 40 years old, as this one is, it's an 83. With these cars reaching around 40 years old and 30 years old, the paint will be faded on the majority of cars. Cars just been garaged and but driven, it's probably gonna have faded paint. As long as they're used, it's not really a big issue in my opinion. As you can see, my paint is in really good shape. It's not perfect, but it's in really good shape. And the reason why that is because I had it repainted. This is not Guards Red. It's called Victory Red. It's actually a Chevrolet color. It saved me a lot of money at the time, and I was very young and I needed to save as much money as possible. And there's no things I want to work on this car. So, yeah, honestly, I actually do prefer this color over the Guards Red because this red's a little bit more deep. I don't know if it makes a whole lot of sense. Guards Red's a lot more orangish. It does look very, very good, but I do prefer this deeper, darker color style of red. The next thing we'll talk about is the door cards. So the door cards themselves, they are very, very weak, brittle, and there's insulation in them, and the insulation falls out and breaks, it gets broken down, and the door cards get shrunk. I don't understand how it happens, but mine have shrunk, especially the passenger side. Around the speaker, there's a gap, and that gap is, I guess, from shrinking or just, I don't know. Next thing I'm gonna talk about is the carpet. The carpet in the rear, the rear trunk, with that big piece of glass back here. The sun is just sitting there baking it. So when the sun's sitting there baking it, it is, it's gonna get brittle and weak, and it's gonna fade. It's gonna have all its issues. The next thing that I fixed on this car personally is the shifter. The shifter itself is super worn out, and once I replaced it, it was a game changer. This car went from being a sloppy car to drive because you had first gear which felt like neutral, and you had second gear which felt like neutral, and so on and so forth. Once I fixed that, it is a fantastic thing. It changed the whole car, even with the suspension being worn out. The shifter made a huge difference. Just more, I guess call it like a driver's mod. It's not really a mod if you're fixing it, but anyways, it's a great thing to do, even if you don't know if it's worn out or not. You'll know, but if you go to fix that, or if it has any sort of play in it, I recommend doing it. I've even seen where people do short shifters. Personally, I like the long throws. Gets you more of a, I don't know, I guess a classic feel, or how this car's supposed to feel. This car came out with long throws, and I like that. I like that about it. The next thing I'm talking about is some of the window motors. So the window motors in these are obviously old. It's a wear item, kind of like the water pump, but more or less a common issue now because the cars are old. I've had to replace both window motors. They both do not work. My switches, that passenger side switch does not work sometimes. Just where it's corroded and then you clean it. No big deal. You need to do it. Um, yeah, let's walk around the back and I'll show you around there. All right. So now that we're around the back, talk about some good things. So some good thing about the car, as you can see, um, it's a very good looking car. You know, with that look, it's also I would believe, or I would say, is a timeless car. You know, having this big curved glass, it's very unique for the time, and then also these body lines, I think they're really good. Um, it almost looks factory wide bodied. Some Egyptian people may like, but some things I don't think it aged too well is like tail lights and the pop up headlights. I don't think it aged really well because it's kind of went obsolete with the pop up headlights. With this checkerboard design, they really went to like a really slim design for the tail lights. Although I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just it gives it more character, adds a little bit to these type of cars. So next thing I'm gonna talk about is PCA. The PCA is it's Porsche Club of America, and it is a very good group. I refuse to. I was those people that want to save as much money as I could, so I refused to join for a while. Or refused to join for a while, and now that I'm in, I regret waiting so long because you get a free magazine every month. I mean, you technically pay for it, but it don't cost nothing to join. So you get a new magazine every month, and you get to go on drives, and there's food involved, and just really great people with really great mindsets. Um, although you have some older people, you have some younger people, they all have a relatively similar mindset. We're all really good people, really great people, and I really recommend anybody with a Porsche that's not joining to join. The region I'm in, um, I've only been on a couple of drives so far, but I thoroughly enjoy it. You're going to see cars like the 944. You're going to see cars like the Boxster. You're going to see cars like the Cayman. You're going to see cars like 911s, even GT3s, GT3 RSs, GT4s, GT4 RSs. I've even seen a GT2 RS. Um, although those cars are very rare, you do see them every now and then, especially on stuff like this. The next thing I'm talking about is actually some of the support. So whenever I went to buy this car, my parents they tried to talk me out of it because with Porsche, parts come from Germany, and believe it or not, they're not that hard to get. So if you're wanting to find stuff, you have people like Elliot Griffin to buy parts for these kind of cars. Look him up. He has just about any part you could ever want at a relatively good price. I really recommend him. And if you're seeing this, thank you for my floor mats. Those floor mats look absolutely stunning. You'll see in a minute, but they're absolutely stunning. I really appreciate you selling those. Anyways, so back to the support. You can actually go to the Porsche dealership and you can find parts of this thing. You're not gonna find a fender. You're not gonna find a sunroof. You're not gonna find a front bumper or anything. But you can find stuff like window motors. I believe window motors, shift boots, seals. I think you need. I'm sure you get the original paint too. I'm not sure how all that works. I have personally never bought parts straight from Porsche. I just know that their support is very good for these classic cars. If I'm not mistaken, I believe they support the cars up to like 60 years or 50 years or around the time. And if I'm completely wrong on this, on these cars in specific, don't quote me on it. I'm mostly sure that you can buy the parts of these cars. Some other good things about the car is how well these things handle. These things handle. They may not be a drag strip monster, but they are definitely a back road killer. Especially for how old these cars are, they handle extremely well. And the reason that is because it's transaxle. So your transmission's back here and your motor's up front. That, like I said before, it gives you a near 50-50 weight distribution. Driving something like that is almost unmatched. Um, the Boxster, it feels very, very light, on its feet. These things feel, um, I wouldn't say heavy, but they they're really light on the toes once they're at speed. Low speeds are not, they're not light on the feet. You can't just go like this and it's zoom back and forth and kind of like that. But these things handle extremely well and they're very, very fun to drive. And it's an experience that's unmatched from a car that's 40 years old. And another thing I'm talking about with this my personal car is these things run very, very well. Obviously, you're gonna have problems in every car. You're gonna, especially problems in this car, like timing belt. But this thing runs extremely strong. I'm not saying I am very hard on it. I do have my moments. Um, I I do. I shift around 5,500 RPM. I think the limiter, or not limiter. I think the red line is around like 6,400 RPM, 6,500 RPM. I think there's a limiter. Personally, I've never found it. I don't want to over rev it, but I shift around 5,000, 5,500 RPM from getting it. I'm shifting normal around 4,000. You know, I drive this thing. I would say hard, but I drive it as intended from Porsche. So another good things about it I'm talking about is storage. So you have a lot of storage in this thing, as you can see. Obviously you don't have a frunk, but you do have a pretty good sized trunk. This trunk is, it's not the biggest thing in the world, but it's pretty good size. I can hold a lot of stuff. Multiple golf bags, multiple bodies if you're really further back here. All jokes aside, not actually, but you can hold a lot of stuff back here. So yeah, let's get on with the montage, and I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, hit me up if you ever want to know anything else about it. I'll include my Instagram in the DMs below, or the comment section below. Shoot me a DM if you have any specific questions. And thanks for watching, and enjoy the montage.